Morgan.
And I'm Jake, and this is Neverland Navigation Radio, where you never know what might be filming. Because today, Morgan, we are discussing
the MGM Studio Backlot Tour.
Woo!
Yay! We're doing the history of one of my childhood favorite attractions.
Oh, yes.
Did you love this?
I loved this. I looked forward to this.
Me too.
On every visit. This is such an exciting blast from MGM past.
Yeah.
We are MGM old school enthusiasts on this podcast. So anytime we are given the chance to indulge ourselves with a little bit of retro MGM, it's like a little treat.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, last year I got to go on the Universal Studios Hollywood Backlot Tour, and even though it's different, it still like kind of warmed my heart because it made me remember this.
Yes, without that, the Universal Hollywood Tour.
Oh, you're right.
There would be no MGM Backlot Tour.
That predated this one by a lot. We'll get into that.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to give any spoilers. Before we dive into the grand history of the Studio Backlot Tour, we wanted to thank you all for joining us on this tour of the history of the tour. If you would like to support us, you can, if you're on an audio platform, subscribe to the show and leave a review to help us keep on going, because you never know what we might want to be filming next in terms of history and top 10s. And if you're on a video platform, specifically YouTube, then check us out on the Neverland Navigation Co. YouTube channel, where we weekly upload the visual version of the podcast for free. So join us over there, like, subscribe, and comment. We would love to see it.
Yes, and if you are thinking about taking any kind of vacation, please consider sending me an email at neverlandnavigationco@gmail.com, because I am a free-to-you travel agent. And when you book a cruise or you book a Disney trip, the price of a personal travel agent is baked into the price you're paying, whether you use one or not. So I would highly appreciate it if you considered letting me be your travel agent and help you out. I do deal monitoring, so I make sure that if a better deal comes out, that I can switch you to that better price, and you get free custom trip t-shirts for your family for your vacation from our 5-star Etsy shop.
If anyone out there is doing like extinct attractions for your shirts, I love when people do that. Yeah. So please do order those and send some pictures.
Yeah.
We love seeing you guys wearing the Neverland Navigation pictures in like park group photos.
Yeah,
that's
super fun.
One of the best parts of doing the t-shirt shop.
It warms my heart so much.
Oh, I love that.
And I have done a really fun Catastrophe Canyon shirt and the Backlot Studio sign shirt. So I love the Extinct Rides shirts. It makes me so happy. My favorite shirt to wear right now, my shirt du jour, well, more than du jour for the past couple months, my favorite one to wear has been the Maelstrom.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I love when people will... I love seeing people in the parks with Extinct Ride shirts and being like, ooh, that's a deep cut. I love your shirt.
Right.
Because then it's truly a linking of the
minds.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah,
and when I wear that shirt, some people will say something.
Yeah.
But there's also a bunch of people that see it and they're like, oh, I love that ride, but they don't say anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe you're sending them on a nice little trip down memory lane.
Yeah. And I just... seeing the shirt when I'm about to put it on gives me the nostalgia. And for this one too. This is one of my favorite childhood rides. In all of its forms. So we will get into that because it did go through some changes. Oh,
I bet. Please take us back.
All right. Going back to the mid-1980s. Michael Eisner, fresh from Hollywood, wanted to offer guests a peek behind the curtain. So he and Imagineer legends like Marty Sklar and Randy Bright expanded a proposed great movie ride pavilion, which was once meant for Epcot, crazy,
amazing,
into an entire new park. So the great movie ride was the first thing that was conceptualized, and then let's just make a whole park.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, this turned into Disney-MGM Studios, which opened on May 1st, 1989. This was a hybrid park where it's part theme park and actually part working studio. Right. And that was the plan. They wanted, it's funny because they do this in Atlanta now, but they wanted a lot of the stuff being filmed in Hollywood to be brought over to Florida.
Right.
So they made this whole space that would be part theme park and part working studio.
Yes.
And when it first opened, there were only 2 rides.
Ooh, this is an excellent trivia question.
Yeah, 2 rides. You want to guess? I already gave it away.
Yes. Well, I don't need to guess because I already know, unfortunately. But still, for all the people out there, do you know what the first 2 rides of Disney's MGM Studios were?
I totally gave it away.
Yes, the Great Movie Ride, of course.
And then this one, the Backlot Tour.
What a 1-2 punch, though.
Yes. I really, like, I was thinking... that would be a lovely day, though.
I know.
You know what I mean? The Backlot Tour was 2 hours when it first opened.
Yeah.
It was a tram tour and a walking tour. Like, you're going through all kinds of different things and seeing. So it wasn't a boring 2 hours. It was like an action-packed, fun times, seeing different things, different aspects of movie making.
Oh yeah.
For 2 hours, and then the Great Movie Ride. Oh my God, one of my favorite rides of all time.
Which was also quite lengthy. You know, it was not a short.
And I'll bet there was quite a line for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, having your lunch, and I just think it would be a lovely day.
It sounds nice.
Yeah.
Some people sometimes refer to some of the parks as half-day parks.
Yeah.
Some of them have gotten that. The Backlot Tour was like a half-day attraction. You know? Yeah. Over 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's quite the experience. But like you said, it was broken up into different, different stops and different
You could really
ideas.
think of it as 2 1-hour things, but I don't know if that makes it any better.
Especially because you couldn't go back.
Yeah. Well, eventually you could. We'll get into it.
Okay.
But I still think it could have been a half-day park if the line for Great Movie Ride wasn't so spectacular.
Yeah.
I don't believe there was a sit-down restaurant when they first opened, but it does sound like a lovely day to me. I don't know what all was up in the front. Do you? When it opened?
Well, Hollywood Boulevard,
with the gift shops and all that.
All of that is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So there were some like quick serve things, like starring roles, the red car.
Gertie was there.
Gertie
from the
was there.
beginning, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Like, that Echo Lake portion was there.
It's interesting to imagine all that stuff that's to the sides of the not being there.
Right. Yeah. But there was a lot that was there. Like Indiana Jones was there. Echo.
I guess that's not a ride, so that's why I didn't.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, that was a show.
Yeah.
So,
lovely day.
Yeah, so Echo Lake was there, the show was there, and at the time there was street entertainment that was going on.
Maybe 50s primetime was there.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
Maybe that whole area around Echo Lake was the same.
The commissary.
I didn't look
Boulevard.
into that because this was supposed to be history of Backlot Tour. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I should have.
Well, there's so much history in MGM to go through. We could truly spend the whole day just going over, the history of the park. But yeah, it is true that there was a lot less on offer because the studio tour was so substantial. Yeah. It was such a big chunk of the time that you spent there.
Yeah. So MGM premiered the park amid a rivalry with Universal, as you can imagine. Since the 1960s, Universal Studios Hollywood had run a very popular backlot tram tour through real movie sets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can imagine. But anyway, Walt Disney himself had once talked about having a studio tour in Burbank, where they did a lot of their like animation and stuff like that.
Cool.
And the idea was shelved due to logistics. And then he later thought that they might do a behind-the-scenes exhibit for Disneyland. And then by the 1980s, Universal was planning a new Florida park with its own studio attraction. And they were calling this the Tour War.
Yeah. That sounds like an excellent title for a documentary. The Tour Wars?
Or a book. Yeah, for sure.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Yeah, Eisner.
Hey, what are you doing later?
Let's write a book.
I think we're actually the perfect people for this. Yeah.
So Eisner accelerated Disney's plans so that Disney-MGM Studios would open before Universal.
Ooh.
I mean, you know what I mean? I always want to be so, and fine, business is business. You know what I mean? But it feels
now, is he a savvy businessman or is he a
shark.
cutthroat shark?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's however you want to frame it, I suppose.
Yeah, Universal's president at the time, Sid Sheinberg, accused Disney of virtually copying their concept and rushing to stake a claim in Florida.
Well,
I can't say I disagree.
when you say studio
actually,
tour,
yeah, Studio War, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't really say that our guy was the good guy in this situation.
No.
It does sound a little shady. If I were Universal, I think I'd be a little mad.
Oh yeah, especially when
they've been doing it since the 60s.
Yeah. And are you going to talk about what Michael Eisner learned while he was at Paramount?
No.
Okay.
Oh, please tell me.
When Michael Eisner was an executive at Paramount, he was there when Universal gave a pitch for Paramount to come on board the Florida park of Universal Studios.
Okay.
So he knew way, way ahead of time exactly what they planned to do before he even got to Walt Disney World at all, the Disney company at all. So with all of that knowledge, it's like, oh, yeah, you did just kind of slide under, and
you're a little snaky. Yeah. It doesn't sound good. I do remember the story a little bit from that Disney Wars book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, on the one hand, in a lot of scenarios, he's kind of our hero, and then because he brought a lot of great things.
Oh yeah, he was a genius in his own right.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, you're like, oh, if I were the other guy, I would be hating this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all in his reputation.
Yeah. But he got some stuff done. So...
Oh, totally. He gave us so many theme parks.
Yeah.
How can you, can't complain about that.
Yep. So Disney countered the accusation of copying Universal by partnering with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, which is MGM, for branding and film rights, which led the park a glamorous Hollywood, Tinseltown kind of vibe. You know what I mean? And they're not like, oh, this is Mickey.
Right.
They're like, we're serious. This is like a major motion picture studio. You know what I mean?
Which I think is a stroke of genius.
It really is.
Especially when you consider the backlog of films that gave
a library of
to.
classic movie scenes for its attractions. Definitely.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hard to not see that as like super smart business. You know, like we're Disney, we've got animated classics and then some live action, historic films of all kinds. But I mean, teaming up with a true legendary movie house, I think was probably the smartest thing that they could do, because they didn't have to license each title individually for things like the Great Movie Ride or the Backlot Tour, which is very smart of them. But obviously they would go on to kind of regret that situation later down the line.
Because it's not long term,
But you can see why they thought that was such a good idea at the time.
Right. And they were thinking these licensing issues coming to a stop later is like next decade's problem.
Exactly. That's the next
We do that sometimes.
Problem.
You know what I mean? As humans.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying to beat Universal to the punch.
Yeah. I sometimes I have too much empathy for my own good. And so I'm like reading about this and I'm like, oh,
that must have hurt their feelings.
That must have been like
same.
They've been doing this since the 60s, and Disney came in and was like, boom.
But when you look at it now with all of the success that Universal has had and with the opening of the theme park that they're about to open at the Universe, you kind of see that everything happened the way it happened,
But even Catastrophe Canyon was kind of ripped off from... So I'll get there in a little bit, but Catastrophe Canyon, which is the pièce de résistance of the Backlot Tour, it's the thing that lived on to the last days. It's the thing everybody kind of went for, was kind of a Disney's take on
so diplomatic.
On Universal's what they called the disaster, which was called Earthquake, but like Earthquake kind of morphed into disaster, and both of those things are wildly similar to Catastrophe Canyon.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right.
Whatever. I'm not gonna diss on Disney because I love this. I didn't know obviously about this when I was a kid.
I was gonna say, when we were kids, we weren't thinking about
I think for
any of
the
that.
normal visitor, who cares? You know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
now, I'm like, I mean, I do feel bad for the people that were in charge of Universal at the time that felt betrayed. But you know,
And as someone who went to Universal and to MGM Studios as a kid, I loved the Earthquake ride,
me too.
and I loved the Catastrophe Canyon portion of the Backlot Tour.
Yeah.
And although obviously they're similar right down to the like oil tanker of it all, you know,
Yeah.
at the same time, I was very excited for both, and I never, because I wanted to ride Earthquake, never made me not want to ride the Backlot Tour, and because
Same.
I wanted to ride the Backlot Tour, it never made me not want to ride Earthquake.
Same.
So, you
Yeah.
know, maybe it all boils down to some healthy competition.
Yeah, and competition has done well for us. You know what I mean? The fact that they're here and they're making Disney stay on their toes, and it kind of goes back and forth.
Oh,
They'll
yeah.
do something, and then Disney's got to react, and then vice versa, and it makes for good entertainment.
Totally. You would not have your Villains Land without Epic Universe.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but at the beginning, I'm sure that was really hard.
Right.
So people did say that Disney Disney-fied the Backlot experience because theirs is a lot different than Universal's.
Mhm.
It has more of a storytelling. It's got more humor. The one that I went on more recently at Universal Studios Hollywood did have some humor
Mhm.
and more storytelling, but I think that they meant that for the original.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
In its original incarnation, the Backlot Tour was an epic 2-part adventure that would last up to 2 hours. It would, the timing would also depend because it was a live tour. You know what I mean?
Right.
With a driver and a host, and
Yeah.
and actually every once in a while they'd have to stop because somebody was filming, which is great. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. Filming a production.
Yes.
Cool.
So I think that's the longest duration attraction of all time for Disney. I couldn't find anything otherwise.
I would, yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, but if you try to look up what's the longest time duration ride at Disney, that information's not really there in any cohesive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been doing this a while now.
I have not heard of anything.
I've not heard anything that even touches 2 hours.
Especially ride. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been long shows, but even like the full-length musicals, like when there was Frozen at the Hyperion and Disney California Adventure and all of that, that was an hour. Those were 45 minutes, never touched an hour. Universe of Energy didn't even touch an hour.
Right.
You know, this is like...
This is serious.
This is serious, long attraction business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The space of it also was so large that early park maps showed the tour encompassing almost half the park area in 1989. Guests embarked on a journey that was equal parts walking tour and tram ride, effectively giving them a grand behind the scenes tour. So here's, I'm gonna go through the ride experience, and this is circa 1989.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about the changes. But nothing gets added later. Things just move around and get subtracted. So this will be kind of the give you the overview, and then we'll talk about how it got moved around and subtracted. So to board the tour, the starting point was Animation Courtyard at the time.
Oh.
Yeah. There was a covered queue, and there were actual props in the queue so that you had something to look at.
Cool.
TVs displayed a short film called The Lottery, which was a comic short film starring Bette Midler.
Oh.
Go Bette Midler. She pops up every once in a while in Disney
She
history.
sure does.
And this comic short starring Bette Midler was filmed on the Backlot's New York Street.
Amazing. So cool.
Yes. As well as a tongue-in-cheek introduction by Eisner and Mickey Mouse called Michael and Mickey, previewing upcoming attractions.
Cool.
Yeah, this lighthearted pre-show set the tone, part real studio, part theme park.
Ah.
Then you get on the tram tour. Guests then boarded an open-air tram, so like rows of theater seats that are on wheels.
Cool.
Then you roll into the heart of the backlot. First, the tram tour will drive by the studio production facilities. including peek-ins at the costume and scenic shops where crews were crafting and real movie props and wardrobe pieces were there and people were actually doing their job. You know what I mean?
Amazing.
Yeah.
That was actually something I really looked forward
Me
to.
too.
Was peeking in on. I'll never forget when I was a kid. We drove through there and they were painting a new backdrop for the Beauty and the Beast show. Like one had gotten old and they were painting a new one or something. And I always thought that was so incredible to see with your own eyes.
I can't imagine how I would have felt if I was working there, like as a costume designer or a set person. If you would have to feel a little bit like a fish in a tank.
Maybe.
But the cool thing, I think, is a lot of these cast members that were working, even though tram after tram came through there, they would wave.
I loved that.
I know.
That's so sweet.
It's heartwarming, especially thinking back to it now. Like, you're doing your actual job.
Oh, yeah.
And having all these people look at you and you're taking the time to wave. It's just really nice.
It is really nice. And it's really impressive to see like rows and rows and rows of costumes like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're really getting a peek at the, the machinery of the
behind
whole
the
production.
scenes. Yes, totally.
Amazing.
A live guide, which will later be replaced by recorded narration, as is the case for a lot of things, unfortunately, pointed out interesting facts as you passed these working areas. Next, for the tram, it would go to the Residential Street, which was a fan favorite. I called this the neighborhoods back in the day.
Right.
The lane line was lined with quaint houses, their facades used for TV shows and movies. The most famous one was the Golden Girls house.
Yes. How cool.
Yeah. And I love this in every tram tour. I've done the Universal one, the WB one, and obviously this one. And I don't know, it just feels kind of magical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is very magical to like get to see, the buildings themselves.
Yeah.
And the Golden Girls house especially, because they used it, from season 2 of the show onward, that was the house that they had on tape for every single episode's exterior shot. It was shot there at MGM Studios.
Yeah.
How cool.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. So in case you never got to experience this, they do tell you these while you're on this tram tour. The guide is telling you that these houses that you're seeing are really just the front of the houses.
Right.
Like if you went around back, you'd see there's nothing there. It's totally fake. The filming is done on location somewhere else in a studio.
Right.
Where they've got more control over sound and it's bigger. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hollywood magic.
So it's just a shell. All right. Originally, the tram then drove to the New York Street area. Mm-hmm. It was called the New York Street sets, later to be known as Streets of America.
Gotcha.
Full-scale city streets that looked straight out of Manhattan, and the tram would actually drive around back there so you could see that. The park wound up being so popular that within a couple of years, Disney opened those streets to guests to walk around, which is how I remember it. I'm sure that's how you remember it.
That's how I remember it too.
Yeah.
Walking up to all the doors and ringing the bell.
And your mom taking pictures. And
Yes.
And they removed that from the tram route so that guests could walk around back there, and it did make for fantastic photo background. You know what I mean? And it's such an educational experience. Like, we talk about forced perspective a lot, but there you really could see it.
It's true,
because if you're at a certain angle, you could see that these buildings aren't even real. You know what I mean? So it helps you to understand kind of the science behind forced perspective and makes your brain understand what you're seeing in the movie and how it's not real.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of an educational experience.
Incredibly.
Edutainment. Yeah.
Like, to know what a facade is, to know what a building flat is.
Right.
How do studios film things that look like New York City without being in New York City?
Right, without shutting down a major city. Yeah.
Exactly, because I remember being a kid and being like, how in the heck did they make this movie?
Yeah,
and to like see it up close is very cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that about it. So Next, after the New York set, until they took that out pretty quick. I'm not even going to mention that later because that it was only, you could only drive, the tram only drove into the New York area for a couple years max.
I
And
can
then they took it
barely
out.
even imagine it because
I
I
know.
remember driving by
Yeah.
the New York area, but to turn in
Yeah.
to like that, go down the street
I don't-
on the tram, I can't imagine
I
it.
honestly can't imagine the route because that's not the way I remember it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So then the tram would drive near the towering Eiffel Tower.
Mm.
So in Hollywood's golden age, studios all had to have a water tower because all of these facades were made out of wood. And if the fire started, they would need immediate access to a crap ton of water so that they didn't lose everything.
Okay, yeah.
That's why you see the WB water tower. And so this is Disney's version of that, just to signify this is a Hollywood studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it ever actually had water in it.
Oh,
because
okay.
it was just they didn't actually need it for that purpose.
Right, interesting.
It was just because every studio had one, and that was kind of their icon.
Cool.
I loved this as an icon. I miss it.
Me too. It so wraps up exactly what they were doing.
Yes.
With MGM
and especially
Studios.
when you know that tidbit of information.
Yes.
That the water towers were there because all of these things were made out of wood and they didn't want to lose everything.
I know. It's so neat.
Yeah. It's a bit of like trivia.
Totally.
All right. The tour then visited the Boneyard, which was an outdoor storage area of large-scale props and vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
This is very memorable for me. It was a lot like a Hollywood junkyard where fans could spot familiar movie relics. Over the years, the Boneyard kept getting new things, so it like amassed an eclectic collection where you would go from the battered steamroller from Who Framed Roger Rabbit to a spacecraft from Star Wars to the motorcycle sidecar from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. A Herbie the Love Bug car was one of the ones I remember the best. Cage props from Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Trimaxian alien ship from Disney's Flight of the Navigator. I don't know that one. But anyway, so there's just all this stuff, and your guide is pointing out all of these things and telling you. But
yeah,
the guide can't point out everything, so you also have to like keep a sharp eye out for stuff, and you might find out later.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That you're like, do I recognize that?
Yeah.
You're like thinking to yourself, going back through every movie I've ever watched, do I recognize any of these?
And this is, pre the internet being everywhere. So
yeah, you couldn't Google it.
Yeah, nowadays I think we would have easy access to a list of everything that was there and what it's from. Right. You know what I mean?
Yes, it just wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that.
And
so
you just actually had to ask the guide.
Yeah, no, there's tons of people on each tram.
Totally.
Yeah. Each artifact came with a story, and guides would often pepper in trivia. Like, that's the actual escape from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Escape pod, sorry.
Yeah.
This portion really sold the idea that you were at a working studio, because it was all just thrown there. You know what I mean? Like, somebody could come back and pick it up to go take it to film something.
I know. What a fun idea.
This had been filmed there, and they just kind of threw it in this junkyard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. I think it added a lot to the vibe. Then the train prepares to enter a real movie set, so you think. Although I don't know if this fooled many people.
Right.
But you'd roll into Catastrophe Canyon, which was a rocky canyon that had a fuel truck and various props were in there. And you'd think, they'd be like, they're actually filming something. We need to be quiet.
Right. They would say quiet on the set.
Yeah. And then you'd hear somebody call action. Hold on, let me get the exact. Somebody called action. The director calls action. And what followed was a bunch of special effects. So there's like an earthquake that shakes the ground, which ignites an explosion of fireball onto the fuel truck. And then there's the rain and the flash flood.
Yes.
Yeah, just all of this stuff. They tell you afterwards how much water So you feel like you're in a movie that's being shot, but also you can feel the heat from the fire, and you can feel the water. Some people got wet, not crazy wet.
Yeah, like sprayed.
Yeah.
Misted.
And then they immediately afterwards would drive around to the back of it so you could see the back of the canyon and like all the water tanks, and your guide's telling you how much water just came down that canyon and how it's going to be recycled to be for the next one. And it was fascinating.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
To go through it and to see all the special effects play out, and then to drive around to the back where it's all steel scaffolding,
Yeah.
was like, as a kid, I could hardly believe it.
I know. I loved this so much.
Yeah.
The next thing that you would pass after the whole Catastrophe Canyon front and back was Walt Disney's personal airplane, which was a Grumman Gulfstream dubbed the Mouse. The tail number was N234MM, and it's the plane that Walt used in the 1960s to scout locations for Walt Disney World.
Cute.
Yes, it's such a cute,
I know, to have that piece of connection to Walt Disney in this park, which is something I know we talk often about, how Disneyland has that like lived in Walt Disney direct connection that Walt Disney World sometimes does not have, but when it's in things like that where you really feel it, Could
you look up for me? I meant to do this before we started, where that plane is now.
Yes.
It's Walt Disney's personal airplane called the Mouse.
Yep.
So it sat proudly displayed on the tram route in later years, and it was just such a wonderful thing. I know it appeared in one of the more recent D23s, not like in it, but like, how at D23 a lot of times they'll have kind of a museum of stuff before you get to the presentations.
Yeah.
And I know it was there for one of those. I don't know where it is now, and I'm very curious to find out.
It is being refurbished at the Palm Springs Air Museum.
Oh.
As of 2025.
And we don't know where it's going.
I believe it is. Well, yeah, I believe this is its final landing connection with Palm Springs.
I can't imagine that.
Inside the Air Museum are several planes. Okay, so they've got several planes from Walt Disney's life there. So yeah, I guess we don't know where it's going after this, but right now it's being spruced up for an exhibit an exhibit in Palm Springs.
Okay, well, I would love to see it.
Yeah, I know. Sounds so cool. We used to see it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go in it. I don't know if
that would be amazing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how much they'd charge me for that. But anyway.
Right.
So after that was the end of the tram tour.
Okay,
but that was a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You saw the costuming and set area, the people working, and the residential neighborhood, and then the Boneyard and Catastrophe Canyon Walt's plane. So it's a lot. I'm sure that part of it took a long time. So after that, you unload from the trams and you take a quick break at a midway point because this is a 2-hour-long thing.
Nice little rest.
Yes. And it had restrooms, a snack stand, and a gift shop, of course.
Yes.
But good for them for having the restrooms. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Restrooms, thank gosh.
Yeah. And then guests would begin a guided walking tour. The first stop was a special effects water tank show. Okay, you may remember this. It gets reordered later.
Okay.
Here, under a large covered set resembling a ship's deck and engine room, guests witnessed a demonstration dubbed Harbor Attack. Lucky volunteers, oh my God, my nightmare, from the audience donned raincoats to star in a mini action scene.
Aww.
One volunteer in the engine room set would get a comical drenching as torrents of water from the overhead dump tanks sprung a leak, while other volunteers on the ship's deck manned battle stations.
Right.
It was usually a dad that they had put in there, so we could all laugh. We'd not feel bad that it was a child or something.
Right.
With help from explosive pyrotechnics, splashing torpedo effects, and a little editing magic, the show recreated a scene reminiscent of the Pearl Harbor attack.
Right.
And then in a campy, entertaining in a few campy, entertaining minutes.
Right.
When they say the Pearl Harbor attack, I assume they're talking about a movie that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, the film
Not the
Pearl
actual-
Harbor. Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't I? Okay.
Right,
I'm
that
aware
came
of-
out later, right?
I'm aware of a Pearl Harbor movie with Josh Hartnett that I didn't see that came out. It wouldn't have been here.
Right. So yeah, maybe
I could be wrong. That it could have been right then. I have no idea.
2001.
No.
So no, yeah.
Yeah. So there must be a movie before that.
Must be, yeah.
But anyway, you get what we're kind of.
Yeah, they're making like a Pearl Harbor like movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this fictitious scenario.
I bet there's a movie.
Right.
Dude, try Pearl Harbor attack movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, so they by the end, the drenched volunteer became the hero of a hilarious home movie shown to the crowd. So they do some quick editing, and they show you how these things that you saw happening that looked ridiculous on this set
Mhm.
make for an actual, cheesy movie action scene.
Gotcha.
Yeah, instead of looking kind of funny like it seemed when we were watching it. So
I loved that kind of thing. That was so like cheesy and
yeah, I wasn't at that point worried about being called up for that. I liked it too.
yeah.
From there, the walking tour led through a backstage prop warehouse, which I remember very vividly. It was amazing. This was a treasure trove, was filled with floor to ceiling, with props and set pieces from Disney productions, old and new. Walking down the aisles on elevated walkways, guests might see a costume from the Santa Claus, a full-size Roger Rabbit dipping machine, life-size Narnia creatures, a Rocketeer jetpack, or even the treehouse set from George of the Jungle.
Cool.
I remember a bunch of Nightmare Before Christmas stuff, because that's probably closer to when my memory started, like, really,
Gotcha. That would be really cool to see.
It was very cool to see, because, I don't know if I had given much thought to what the Nightmare Before Christmas figures looked like before they got filmed.
The claymation of it all.
Yes, very interesting to have a bunch of that there, and it was behind glass and very cool.
Yep, I remember the Narnia stuff.
But also, very good job for them to be able to promote their stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, in like a really memorable kind of way.
Yes.
Totally.
I like this much better as promotion than making, I don't know, never mind. Each item was tagged with its movie of origin, which made the space feel like a kind of a living museum of the film's history, and kind of made it seem like somebody could come grab this and use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
love that.
They were really going for we're in the middle of filming a bunch of stuff. Like, you felt like,
Yeah, like you're in the studio process.
Yeah, I love that.
Me too. Just to answer a previous question, there were several Pearl Harbor movies throughout
I imagine.
history prior to MGM Studios opening, including a film called 1941, a film called From Here to Eternity, and a propaganda film called Remember Pearl Harbor. So there's been a lot of Pearl Harbor media prior to the Pearl Harbor film that I think we all think of when we think of Pearl Harbor.
At least people like closer to our age, yeah.
Right. How many times can I say Pearl Harbor?
I know.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I was reading this, because I had done this a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
So I've seen this making of movie magic
pre-show
thing so many times, and not once. I had no memory of it being Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And then I think Pearl Harbor, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so dark and dramatic. It doesn't mesh up in my head.
Not very
with this
Disney.
Kind of like fun, comical, you know what I mean?
Right. So
I really think it should have been like more like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or something wildly fictional.
Right.
Rather than based on true events that were dark and not something you would be thinking about in a Disney park.
Even the words Pearl Harbor.
I don't like it. Yeah.
So serious for a Disney thing.
Yes, that's what I mean. Not,
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, you would ascend some stairs, and you get a bird's eye view into an actual soundstage, multiple actual soundstages.
Did you ever get to do this part?
I definitely saw sound stages, but I don't remember being high up when they're saying that there were catwalks involved. So I don't think so.
I don't think I ever got to do this either, and I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity because how amazingly cool.
I remember walking through sound stages though.
Right. So maybe a different version of this. But I think this is so awesome. Like the catwalk walk by of it all.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing.
Yeah, I do too. So cool. It really puts you there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you might, when you're going through this catwalk walkway part, you might look into a soundstage and it's dressed as a city street for a TV show, or they might be rotating a showcase. Sometimes they would do the making later on. Sometimes they would do the making of whatever the latest Disney film title was.
Okay.
That is what I remember. I don't remember seeing it from high up though.
Gotcha.
Where it's the making of, it wasn't like an actual thing.
Right. It was like a presentation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And sometimes you would stop and watch a short film about an upcoming movie production. I do think I saw something like that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Gotcha. It was a while ago now.
Yes. Next, you would go to Disney Animation Studio. Through glass windows, you would be able to see people animating. I also don't know that I got to do this.
I don't think I saw this either.
Yeah, it was actually a separate thing. So you would have had to... The timeline of when they took out some of this stuff and made it separate is a little iffy. I saw multiple dates, but this says it was technically a separate attraction called the Magic of Disney Animation, but it should have been what was next if you were following the walking tour the way you were supposed to.
Okay.
But like I said, I don't remember it, you don't remember it, so I'm not sure. I think I would have been impressed and had a memory from seeing real animators.
You know what I do remember? The sign. And
okay.
If you want to look at it right now, I just Googled the Magic of Disney Animation and the sign of the exterior of the attraction. So I believe it went through phases of being part of the tour and being something you could pop in and out of. And I think
that's what makes sense based on the fact I couldn't find dates.
And I don't think I ever even did it, which is unfortunate because it sounds so cool.
Same.
But this sign of Mickey Mouse climbing a film reel is it sticks out in my mind as something that I definitely saw in real life.
Yeah. And so in this studio, they were really doing things for a long time. I have a list. Give me 1 second and let's see.
They were animating?
Yes, they were actually animating and they even wound up doing full-length movies.
So magical.
Yes. Guests were led into a small theater, which was Walt Disney Theater, where editors demonstrated how music, sound effects, and editing polished the raw footage. Hold on, I'm gonna back up. I don't know if I lost my list or if it's later. Oh, so they did Mulan and Lilo and Stitch for sure. I think there were more, and I think I've got a list that might come up later.
Okay, awesome.
But for sure, those two were like fully animated here.
It's so crazy to think about. Like Lilo and Stitch and Mulan are like huge Disney movies. Massive in their legacy.
To think you could have been watching it in its, being made.
And it honestly gives me pride in like to be like an MGM fan to know that they were like producing major studio films in the park at the time. So I agree. Cool.
Yeah.
You go, team.
So the next part of the walking tour was what I was saying, where they were demonstrating how music and sound effects and editing polish raw footage.
Cool.
Often this included a sizzle reel of upcoming Disney releases. Again, they're promoting their stuff. I think this is a good way to do it. Essentially coming attraction trailers as a grand finale.
Right.
And I mean, it sounds good. I don't remember that. So maybe it seemed pushy to people that were there or people that were adults at the time.
Right.
I don't know. I don't remember it. And if I did remember it, I would have been a young child. So I'm not sure.
I can picture it though.
I can too. It's like, well, I guess the end of Great Movie Ride wasn't stuff coming though. It was stuff that was,
right.
I guess a little bit that what we have in Hollywood Studios now, where it's the Walt Disney Presents.
Oh yeah. Like ends, the end of that.
Yeah, ends in kind of a preview. Although we've had the live Little Mermaid for like the last 2 years.
That is so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess maybe that feels a little pushy, although it depends on the movie.
Yeah, I feel like it would feel more pushy in this context in the middle of something rather than something that you choose to either
Well,
sit
maybe
through or
this
not.
was, I mean, this was the end. So maybe it was something you could kind of walk through.
Okay, well, yeah.
I don't know.
That'd be good. I get that, yeah.
In the early days, this is where the Michael and Mickey clip might play again, highlighting new films on the horizon. You want to make sure you remember who did this for you.
Yeah, this is me, by the way. That's so
You
funny.
can't imagine what I've had to do. I made a deal with the devil. We got it here before Universal. You're going to remember my name.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, good for him.
Yeah,
He put in the work.
fine.
Yeah.
It was an appropriate end. You have seen a movie scene from start to finish. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So if you think about that, it's rather poetic.
Yes.
Walking out, guests pass through one last treat exhibits from the American Film Institute, showcasing famous movie costumes and props like Dorothy's dress from The Wizard of Oz and Darth Vader's helmet.
Now that is amazing. I wish I would have gotten to see that.
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, because the ruby red slippers were in the Great Movie Ride, so it's very cool that they have both.
Totally.
This exhibit, which was also the attraction's gift shop, was a late addition, open to all park guests, but cleverly positioned so that the Backlot Tour riders had to walk through it to exit. So that's that. So that was the whole 2-hour experience. How do you feel?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I need a break.
A break?
No.
You're funny.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a big production. You know what I mean? Like a big
But
razzle
doesn't it
dazzle.
sound fun the whole time? I think like they would have me like entertained the whole time.
Oh yeah, I think that I would love to experience this now.
Yeah, I would too, and I would be all there for the full 2 hours, but apparently people weren't, so I'm going to get into the changes.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, and I get it. Some people have little kids or elderly parents. We'll get into it.
It's Walt Disney World, I feel like, attracts a slightly different crowd than the Universal tram tour just to begin with. I know nowadays the tram tour is very aimed at being, something that can be accommodating to families and stuff. But the idea of an hours-long studio tram tour, I mean, people were saying that it was Disney-fied for MGM. Well, I certainly hope so. Look at all the kids and stuff going on it,
Yeah. Agreed. So, like any production, the Backlot Tour went through many rewrites. And the first adjustment came quickly, and that was by 1991, the walking portion was split off into a separate experience called Backstage Pass.
Okay.
It had its own entrance at Mickey Avenue. So they went ahead 2 years into it and split the tram from the walking experience. This allowed people to do one but not the other. This article I read gave them the opportunity to not go on the tram, and I'm like, why would you want that? Like, if I were going to do one but not the other, it would probably be the tram. But maybe I don't know. Maybe there's some accessibility issues. I don't know.
Yeah. I see why they wanted to split it up.
Yeah, I do too. I would have done both, but I would have liked the idea of getting lunch in the middle. You know what I mean?
That sounds great.
Yeah. In 1996, a reconfiguration moved the tram tour's entrance to the end of Mickey Avenue. Do you know where Mickey Avenue is?
No.
Where Backstage Pass had been. I don't know. I don't think anywhere's called Mickey Avenue at this point in Hollywood Studios. So I didn't see that and go, oh, I know where that is. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, real production at the studios was winding down. And so the tour content shifted more towards nostalgia than active filmmaking.
Gotcha.
Which is sad.
A little bit. Yeah. So it's by one man's dream on the way to Pixar behind the Great Movie Ride.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's Mickey Avenue. So that's where the entrance was to Backstage Pass.
Okay, cool. Well, they wound up moving the entrance. I don't know. Anyway, the tour, yeah, I don't know. So then they were going more for like nostalgic filmmaking, but in the early 2000s instead of live stuff, because people didn't want to film there anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that was an unfortunate kind of turn that happened with Universal Studios Orlando and with
Hmm.
Disney's MGM Studios, is that although they began with these plans of being the Hollywood of the East and all of
Yes.
this, it ended up being kind of a dud at the end of the day, because the plan to have Nickelodeon stuff shot at Universal Orlando kind of died when Nickelodeon opened its Burbank offices and they began to animate stuff there, and they filmed their live action stuff in Nickelodeon on Sunset, and that basically was the death sentence for the Nickelodeon Studios tour at Universal Orlando.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath, it was basically the case that they stopped animating stuff at Hollywood Studios and people stopped filming there.
Yeah.
What a sad,
It is sad.
decline of the concept.
I wonder why they didn't have more say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's surprising to me because they're like, oh yeah, Florida's too hot. Okay, I get that California has better weather, but
Right.
like you own all of these things that are recording.
Yes.
It's surprising to me.
I also think there was, because California began to roll out a huge series of greater tax incentives in the late 90s and the 2000s. I think, unfortunately, a very boring businessy transition of filming priorities began, which is very unfortunate for the studio's concept, because, you know, you want to see that dream.
Yeah.
You know, you want to see a great Disney movie made at MGM
I just
Studios.
can't. The taxes or the tax breaks or whatever would have had to be so substantial with how much more expensive it is just to exist in California.
Yeah. And that's why things are shot in Atlanta and stuff now.
Yeah,
because Georgia
Canada,
came out with amazing tax incentives.
Oh, okay. I know a lot of filming is done in Canada now.
Yeah, that's very true. That it's more expensive in some cases now to film, in a lot of cases, to film a movie in Hollywood, which is crazy because that was the death of this, you know?
Right.
It's like, that's how it goes, I guess.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The Backstage Pass walking tour closed in 2001, as and then the sound stages that it used were then repurposed for new attractions like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It, and later Toy Story Midway Mania.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. This meant that the Backlot Tour lost the last of its walking sections and became entirely a tram-driven ride with only the Harbor Attack volunteer show as a prelude. Did I say that earlier? So that it switched?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. They switched it and put it at the beginning.
Unfortunately, that is the version I remember
Me too.
the most, is when it started with the Pearl Harbor, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
That practical demonstration, then you got on the tram tour
Yeah.
and kind of did the
That's how I remember it too. But I remember afterwards being able to walk through some stuff, but my family, I don't think walked through everything, which is a little sad, but we couldn't have known, I guess, at the time that
it would be going away.
Yeah. In 2003, Disney closed and demolished Residential Street. This is where my heart starts to hurt.
Yep.
Because they demolished like the Golden Girls house facade, and I just can't understand that.
I know.
Like, move it somewhere. You guys have so much space. I don't understand.
Very sad.
Yeah, and that was to make way for the Lights, Motors, Action Extreme Stunt Show, which is just crazy to me. Not that that wasn't like a good thing in its own, but did it have to go right there? I just don't get it.
I know.
So the tram tour route had to be rerouted around this massive car stunt show stadium.
Yeah. And
the Boneyard kind of got smaller and smaller, with many of the props being relocated. This meant that a lot of these things were gone for good. It's just crazy to me. Like, I feel like this stuff should be in a museum or put somewhere else, and they're just like,
it is.
Yeah, set it all on fire. It kind of makes me mad.
Some stuff did get relocated to Walt Disney Studio Park in Paris, where they have a a backlot tour
they're about to lose.
that they might lose, or I think are losing.
Yeah,
officially.
100% for Frozen, I think.
Right. So that is also very unfortunate. Hopefully there's preservation of those things, but historically might not be the case.
Yeah, it's just sad. Like, I mean, sell it, I think. You know what I mean?
Oh, an auction?
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to go, even
and
if
then
I
at
don't
least
buy
it exists
anything.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. It just makes me frustrated. Anyway, the tram, there still was a tram for a while after this. The tram still visited Catastrophe Canyon.
Yeah.
That remained a must-have. I said that at the beginning. This was like the big part of it.
Right.
But now much of the ride between the highlights was looping around a stadium and the reduced Boneyard. So it was kind of got sad. It got sad.
Yeah, I remember it in those last couple years.
Yeah.
It was definitely a shell of its
former glory.
With the shorter run time and the reduced Boneyard circuit. Yeah.
In 2008, the park was officially rebranded Disney's Hollywood Studios. The Backlot Tour saw a modernization. They call this a modernization, where they fired your guide and put in a recorded narration. I don't love it when they do this, so I don't think I think modernization is making it sound too nice.
I agree. I think
they budget cut.
Yeah, I completely agree.
The cost of the narrator.
I never experienced this version. And
I didn't either.
I'm almost glad that I can hold on to the memories of it the way it was.
Yeah.
I think that a narrator is like the heart and soul of this attraction.
I do too. The Universal Hollywood tour had a pre-recorded stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
The WB tour we did was done with a personal guide, which was really nice.
Love that.
Yeah. So I don't like it when they do this. I don't like it when they've done it. They've done it on a bunch of stuff. I don't like it.
Right.
By the 2010s, what remained of the studio's Backlot Tour was essentially a shortened highlight reel of what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
You'd still get that harbor attack demo. You'd see some props. You'd ride past a few vehicles in the Boneyard, and you'd do Catastrophe Canyon. But like we said, it just got sad.
Yeah.
So here's where, hold on. I'll talk about the closure, but then I'm going to go back to some happier points, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to backtrack a little. On September 27th, 2014, that was the last tour. And this is where I think Disney really did the fans dirty, okay?
Okay.
They told cast members that it was going to be a temporary shutdown, but they knew it wasn't.
Ugh.
They, overnight that night, took down the entrance sign. So it's not like it had any chance of coming back. They already had plans for the space, and they just didn't give people the chance to ride it one last time. They didn't give notice. It just seems very disrespectful.
Yeah. That is the worst way Disney can close an attraction.
Yeah.
Is, when things get put on seasonal operation and they are given a while operating like that, and then months ahead there's a closing date announced and fans are given the chance to plan another trip to get to experience it one last time.
Even when they make shirts, you know what I mean? Like,
farewell shirts.
Yeah,
there's a proper way to do this. There is
a proper way to do this, and this was not it. This was a really slap in the face.
Especially since it had already fired so many cast members from the attraction, to give your remaining cast members hope that it might return, only to never open the attraction again and not provide them any warning that their job was going to be.
I'm sure they moved the cast members. They are good about that, but
it's true.
The fans, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that it's so sad.
Yeah. One of your original two rides at this theme park. Yeah, it is very,
sad.
very, very sad. I wish they would have given it more of a proper farewell.
Yeah. I want to jump back to some happy nostalgia.
Please.
Okay, so this was a real working studio back in the day, and I made some notes about the things that, and this is where my list of movies are. And I just want to mention it because this is what made it feel like it just was so exciting.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know who you're going to see.
Ugh.
You don't know if you're going to see something being filmed. You don't know if you're going to have Justin Timberlake walk by you.
Amazing.
Because from 1989 to 1994,
Action.
the new Mickey Mouse Club was filmed here. That's the one with all of our stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling and Christina Aguilera, right? Like everybody was there. So they were all here for all 5 of those years. It wasn't uncommon for guests of MGM Studios to see a filming in progress light or hear a director call action. And it just gave a buzz of excitement and magic, movie magic that we don't get anymore.
I know.
Disney promoted it at the time by saying the Hollywood that has come to Florida, and the tram narrator hosts would say, you never know what might be filming. The tour guides shared anecdotes like how Bette Midler's short comedy The Lottery was shot on New York Street when you're passing New York Street, or they'll point out which soundstage was being used today for a new sitcom, and that just made people so excited. On rare occasions, if a major production was shooting a scene outdoors, the trams would have to stop or detour, which isn't annoying, it's exciting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. In 1988, there was a 1988 film called Ernest Saves Christmas that was filmed in MGM, but before it was open. But the tour guides would be able to say, oh, this is where this was filmed, or this was where this was filmed. So that was exciting.
Cool.
Sometimes when you were on the tour or in the backlot area, you could see a lighting truck going by or see a camera, and it just unexpected kind of things to tell you you're on a movie set.
How awesome.
The Florida Animation Studio, this is what I was talking about earlier. They did, okay, here are the big ones that they actually fully animated in MGM Studios.
Okay.
Mulan in 1998, Lilo and Stitch in 2002, and Brother Bear in 2003. But obviously it was being drawn out before that.
Right.
There were animated shorts like Roger Rabbit cartoons, like Roller Coaster Rabbit in 1990 and Trail Mix-Up in 1993, plus segments of bigger films. Behind the scenes, the operations were challenging because of Florida's heat. I didn't know about the tax thing. None of my research said anything about that, but I believe you.
Gotcha.
And it says a limited talent pool for crew, which surprises me. That sounds like a cop-out. And Burbank's reluctance to move major productions to Florida from Hollywood. By the mid-90s, the novelty of filming in a theme park wore off. The Mickey Mouse Club ended in 1994, and that was like a huge thing because for those whole first 5 years, the biggest studio, or one of the biggest studios in MGM Studios, was booked around the year, all permanently booked by Mickey Mouse Club, and that gave that excitement that something's definitely filming here all the time.
One of Disney's own in-house projects. It makes perfect sense in my mind.
It makes perfect sense, yeah. After 1994, some small productions, like a few game shows and music videos, and the 1994 Hulk Hogan series, Thunder in Paradise, they were shot there, but obviously that stuff's a little less exciting than Mickey Mouse
Little
Club.
niche, yeah.
Yeah.
Still cool, though.
Yeah, but the tour guides would highlight whatever they could. If a commercial was being shot, they would mention it. They would have sets still brought in, like they got 101 Dalmatians, the live one, and Home Improvement.
Right.
The tour guides were like constantly evolving with what was there and what was being brought in and what was happening to make sure it was new every time.
Yeah, it was fresh.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool that they were able to import stuff like that.
Yeah. The Florida Animation Studio, which sounds so cool to me, it continued until 2004, but they shut it down because basically that was the point in which they stopped doing that kind of animation and started moving to computers, and obviously didn't think it would be very exciting to watch a bunch of people on computers like it would be to watch a bunch of people sketching out cartoon characters.
Right.
So that's that. To let you know where stuff Like if I'm the kind of person, and I think Jake is too, where I like to know if I'm standing somewhere what used to be here.
Yeah.
So here's a little overview, and then I'll wrap up.
Amazing.
Toy Story Land is where Catastrophe Canyon and the Boneyard were. Slinky Dog Dash is where the Earful Tower was.
Really? I didn't know that.
Streets of America, the neighborhood, and sound stages, a bunch of sound stages, are now Galaxy's Edge. The location of the Golden Girls house is roughly where you can get a Ronto wrap now.
I love that.
Yeah, it's weird.
It is weird. They have nothing to do with each other, but I love a Ronto wrap.
People love that.
And now when I go get a Ronto wrap, I'll say thank you for being a friend to the cast member. No, I'm just kidding. But that is really, really interesting to know. I love the idea of the Slinky Dog Dash, to know that that's where the Earful Tower used to be. Yeah. That's pretty cool. It's not, it's one of those things where it hurts your heart a little bit, but you're glad to know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a cool thing to know. It's a cool thing to stand there and be like, you used to, if you would look up.
Back in my day.
No, I try not to do that, but yeah.
Well, that was awesome.
Super
Thank you
fun.
so much. There was so much information. Sad. I know it is. That one is a little bit of a sad story, but I'm very grateful that we were both able to experience this so many times.
Yeah.
We've got great memories of it, and it is truly like a core attraction for the history of MGM Studios. So I'm glad that we were able to learn so much about it today.
Yeah. Next time I should do the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Playground. It'll be like a 15-minute episode.
I know, if we ever want to do like a mini-sode.
Hey, guess what used to be here?
A mini-sode, because it's shrunk.
Minnie. Oh, and Minnie Mouse. Oh my gosh, so many minis.
So look out for that. That's in the works. That was awesome. I love doing these MGM history episodes. If you guys have enjoyed this episode, thank you so much for joining us to the end. It's been a lot of fun. Cut. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of Neverland Navigation Radio, and we'll see you on our next adventure. Goodbye.